I'll let you guys know off the jump that there's absolutely nothing on this fine blue earth that's scarier than a white man in a Rick and Morty t-shirt. If you happen to see one, please don't look it directly in the eyes and make sure to back up very slowly and don't run away. Doing so will further provoke it, and that's something you simply don't want, because it can and will smack. I'm sorry, I have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. Rick and Morty was always one of those shows I enjoyed growing up. No matter how good or bad it got, you'd see me sitting on the couch at 11 p.m. on a Sunday night, knowing I had school the next day just to watch a new episode. And much like myself, many other people feel the exact same way, loving Rick and Morty beyond any means imaginable. Some a little bit more than others, but with all bad things comes good things, and with all good things, you know they eventually have to come to an end. Because when Rick and Morty first dropped way back in December of 2013, that's all the snotty-nosed middle schoolers used to talk about. And with the fan base being somewhat primarily in that age range, of course you can expect some outside, hate. Though of course many adults as well love this show to death, some even going as far as to get a Rick and Morty ass cheek tattoo. And I'm not one to judge, but if my significant other were to pull down their pants and show me a Rick and Morty ass tattoo, you best believe I'm breaking up with them immediately, flying to the whereabouts of Justin Roiland and Dan Harmon, sitting them down for some tea and having a long 8+ hour talk about this monstrosity they've brought upon this world. But seriously though, this fanbase is definitely one of the main reasons people hate this show. Even though personally I don't think you should let a fanbase dictate your enjoyability of the media you view or consume, but unfortunately nobody cares about my opinions and, do it anyways. Rick and Morty fans being some of the worst possible offenders for despicable activity, ranging from the Pickle Rick phase, to the Szechuan sauce phase, to the higher IQ phase, to the commercials phase, porn phase, pony phase, Funko phase, order phase, unemployment phase, and probably the worst of the bunch, the fucking NFT phase. And it was like that for a while, but believe it or not, ever since 2018, fans of Rick and Morty, and those who criticize them, more or less vibed out and are kinda on the chill side of things nowadays. The main topic of current Rick and Morty discussion now being, and stay with me here, I'm gonna say something really crazy, or I'm gonna say something really wacky, the actual content of the series. I told you it would be crazy. Yeah, there's pretty much no surprise to pretty much anyone who's been keeping up with the series as of late to not notice the drastic decline of quality in the later seasons. The hate for season 4 and 5 being at an all-time high in comparison to how the show was viewed 5 to 6 years ago. Now having like 50 million videos made on the downfall of Rick and Morty. Like, my goodness guys, calm down. But when I use the term hate in this context, I use it very lightly. Because oftentimes the hate is actual valid criticism of the show and the people who created it, instead of people just being like,
Rick and Morty sucks. The show isn't intellectual. The show is the opposite of funny. And if you watch it, then don't ever talk to me again.
When it comes to Rick and Morty, most people can agree the overall turn in quality took a dip the minute season 3 started, due to the very first episode rewinding the status quo on the series and giving the season a clean slate to work with, having almost nothing change from season 2 with barely any to no consequences at all. And they'd be right. Rick doesn't really face any trial or error. I get that he's supposedly the smartest man alive, but why set this up to be some grand sacrificial turning point in Rick's arc just to have him break out with no difficulty? Jerry and Beth's divorce also happened this episode, with the world seemingly turning back to normal, and by the end of the episode I'm left with a very strong feeling of betrayal? Like the staff is afraid to dip their toes into the water and experience the concept of characters having to actually live with their consequences. And for me, episode 1 of season 3 is probably one of the best in terms of entertainment, but some of the worst when it comes to furthering the story in a naturally progressive way. So I can understand why someone would hate it. But I like season 3 overall, so those people are automatically wrong by default. Season 3 has its problems for sure, but I think the positives definitely outweigh the negatives. But if there's any season of Rick and Morty that I believe is 100% justified in the hate it gets, it's gotta be season 4. Not just because this was the season that I remember the least about, but because this season is the Amy Schumer of Rick and Morty content. And that's not to say season 4 is all bad. One of my favorite episodes in the entire show is the Vat of Acid. But going back and watching this season, it really makes me wonder why we didn't get more episodes with that level of quality. Because when the episodes hit, they really did hit. Most episodes ranging from bad to just decent, with only a few being genuinely great. Because a lot of season 4 is just pure concept and almost nothing else. They lead on with a cool idea for an episode and then butcher its execution by either having the jokes be unfunny, being too meta, having the concept overpower the storytelling, contradicting already established character arcs and traits just for the sake of the plot, or throw in several jabs in how they love episodic storytelling all of a sudden for some some fucking reason. Like, yes, we get it, you guys hate continuity now. Can you please stop shoving it down my throat and expecting me not to gag? Like the episodes with the sentient snakes or the infamous dragon episode being guilty of all of these. What I do love about these seasons though is that they're more family oriented in comparison to previous seasons. Getting the family involved is definitely a step in the right direction when it comes to a cast like this. Oftentimes shows don't know what to do with a larger cast, but Rick and Morty seems to balance it somewhat well. Like the development for Beth, Jerry, Summer, Morty, and even Rick as a family dynamic and as individuals are as clear as day. They do things more as a family and they act more like a semi-functional family. They are growing, but they're also regressing as well. And it makes me think, is this good character regression or is it bad character regression? You have Morty acting out of character, which isn't really out of the ordinary for him, but when it interferes with the plot to the extent of some of these episodes, you can kind of see where the general hate comes from. And the same can be said for the entire family. Like having Beth and the rest of the family be completely content about her being a potential clone. They've been around Rick long enough for this shit not to faze them pretty much, I'm sure, but I'd expect a little more, you know, long-term reaction. They made it out to be some big deal only for it to really go nowhere in the end, which kinda sucks ass. Now season 5 though is a particularly tough cookie in this instance as well, having the same issues as season 4 but not nearly enough to make it worse in my opinion. Like the fact that they pumped out the sentient sperm and Planetina episodes in the same season really speaks volumes for how flip-flop these later seasons have become. Coming off the inconsistent mess that was season 4, the hate from fans turned into hope when season 5 came around and released its first 3 episodes and surprised a lot of people when they actually turned out to be pretty good. The jokes felt more witty, the concepts were executed fairly well, we were getting more development for Morty and his relationship issues, his connections with Beth and Summer expanding, and overall things were looking up for the new season. But then episode 4 came around and managed to turn more heads than me finding out the word used for a British meatball. Don't look it up by the way, trust me. Yeah, it's the cum episode. This episode alone was single-handedly responsible for almost making me and several others drop season 5 as a whole, and happens to be Barack Obama's least favorite Rick and Morty episode of all time. Trust me, I asked him. People absolutely despise this episode and I think it's for good reason. If you've seen it, you definitely know what I'm talking about. The jokes barely land, the plot is damn near non-existent, and it feels so disconnected from other Rick and Morty episodes. It's like they changed the staff to a bunch of old ladies with dementia just for this one episode. And they keep reusing the same joke for the sake of it, thinking it would get funnier the 10th time they repeat it. But shocker. It doesn't. It goes on and on about how Morty masturbated with a horse pump and it feels way too excessive, which leads me into why I think people hate season 5 a bit more than others. It's because a lot of the jokes are excessive. In a comedy show, you can always expect a team to reuse a joke here and there, because that's usually how running gags work. But when it's a constant joke and an unfunny one at that, it gets very tiresome after a while. Like they keep talking about Morty and Summer having a giant incest baby like it's the funniest shit you've ever heard. And of course, comedy is subjective. You can laugh at, you know, pretty much anything you want. Hell, I find fart jokes the funniest thing ever. But when the collective fan base starts becoming more resistant to the constant jokes you're telling, it's best to either tell new jokes or just don't tell them at all. But other than a few episodes in season 5 and the finale being a bit rushed in trying to continue the evil Morty plotline in the most forced way possible, there's definitely much more to love about this season compared to the last. And it finally feels like Rick and Morty found its footing again heading towards the finale. Or is kind of getting there at least. So that leads me to the grand prize question. Is it cool to hate Rick and Morty now? Yes and no. You see, to me, the beauty of consuming media is that we can all form different opinions on it. We can all feel or think a certain way about anything in any which way we desire. We can all disagree on something or we can all agree on something, and at the end of the day, none of us are truly in the objective wrong. Unless you're this guy, of course. If you want to hate Rick and Morty, go right ahead. I don't really give a shit. If you want to love Rick and Morty, you know, go right ahead. You do you. Just know that I'll personally give you the firmest handshake you've ever received. Whatever you do though, just don't be this guy, okay? Good night.
Rick and Morty, Rick and Morty, Rick and Morty, Rick and Morty.